Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you that are calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls and bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people. You have other things to do. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for the potential reset of some of these other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about the situation in Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or the purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we believe to be most relevant. And certainly for those of you holding the dinar and these other currencies, the most relevant piece of information would be the potential window for the reinstitution of the dinar. It is our continued belief that January of 2020 is the most plausible date for the reinstitution of the dinar. We're going to discuss the rationale here in just a moment. I know that from the calls and emails I get, people are very disappointed. They're evidently listening to these other quote-unquote gurus who have special super inside information, and the revaluation is going to happen in the next 5 seconds. But if we just stand back and look at the facts, it's pretty clear that it's unlikely, although not impossible, that we'll see a reinstitution prior to January of 2020. So let's get into this information, and let's start with a takeaway from the Trump-Al-Kazemi meeting that took place a little while ago, a week or so ago. First, it seems that Donald Trump, despite what's going on in this country right now, it's an election year, we have the issue with the coronavirus, we have violence in some of the city streets, but Trump continues to get things done behind the scenes that people thought were not going to be possible. The deal between United Arab Emirates and Israel with regard to economic trade. Now we have, unbelievably, Hamas and Israel talking about mutual cooperation. There's all kinds of things going on that one would not have expected to be done, particularly at this particular time with all of the complications in the country. But let's talk a little bit about what it looks as though the results of this meeting between Trump and Al-Kazemi. First, Al-Kazemi has announced that he will not run for re-election in June. Now, I know this has disappointed a lot of people because it seems as though he's beginning to get some things done. But I actually take the opposite view. I actually think this is good news. And the reason I say that is because since he is not running for re-election, that frees his hands to do many of the things that need to be done and to make many of the hard decisions it would be difficult for a politician to do who's planning on running for re-election. He says that he is going to, for the time being, suspend the Iraq-China deal. As far as I'm concerned, that deal is dead. He said that he will expel the Iranian militias, and he already has the cooperation of the United States military for that. He says that he will be releasing the corrupt files. This is the corrupt files having to do with the pro-Iranian officials who have been skimming the country for billions over the years, with some of that money flowing to the Iranians to foment terrorism worldwide. And he also said he's going to finally audit the Kurdistani government, which, of course, has created an entire group of phantom employees that have been being paid by the Baghdad government. So all of these issues do need to be resolved. We're also been told that the 2021 budget is scheduled to be presented to the Parliament in October. That gives them plenty of time to get a budget passed by January 1st of 2020. The CBI says they also expect to formally initiate the National Education Program and complete the deletion of the zeros by December, once again lining up everything for the reinstitution in January. Iraq is also scheduled to enter the QFS in December. Now, what is the QFS? That is the Quantum Financial System. It is the new, highly technical financial system that will be utilized for interstate banking and international financial transactions. Now, there is a lot going on globally also that's pointing to January of 2021 as being the most plausible date for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. I'm going to probably oversimplify everything, but the reason I'm doing so, there's two issues with regard to the reinstitution that I think may not be on the front burner but are important. First is Basel III compliance. What is Basel? Basel is a system of 5 phased-in transitions from fiat-based to commodity-backed currencies. We're currently in Basel III. Very simply put, the valuation of a currency internationally relative to other currencies is based on the known natural resources in that country and that country's ability to bring those resources to the market within 5 years. And as I've stated many times in the past, it can be argued that per square mile, Iraq may be the richest country in the world, and I'm not going to get into all of the detailed explanation of their known natural resources. But Iraq is in a position to have their currency not only reinstitute, but revalue at a rate even higher than we've been talking about for the last few years. Now, Basel III compliance is the determinant of what a currency is worth. The QFS, the Quantum Financial System, is the new system based on interstate and intergovernmental banking transactions and international contracts. What this really means is we're viewing not only the death of the fiat currency system, but also the manipulation of that system. And no country is more guilty of currency manipulations than China. What's happening right now, and I don't know whether the coronavirus was the last straw, but what's happening right now is that the abuses that China has foisted globally, whether it's trade, whether it's the fact that we've had a mysterious breakout of some virus from China every 3 to 5 years, but everything is changing, and it's not in China's best interest. First, the Iraq-China deal is gone. And, of course, what did China do? China sat back and watched the United States and Western European coalition of nations basically resurrect Iraq from the rubble since 2003. They've dumped $4 trillion into the resurrection of Iraq. So what's China do? They sit back, they do nothing, and then they try to backdoor us and go in there and then garner for themselves these cherry contracts with China. Well, fortunately, Donald Trump put a stop to that. And we ought to thank God he was the president, because Hillary Clinton would have green-lighted all of that. I can't mince words with it anymore. Donald Trump is the reason this currency is going to revalue, period, end of story. Second, this Chinese Silk Road initiative is stalled and possibly dead. And, of course, what China was trying to reinstitute with the Silk Road initiative is to basically, once again, get favored and First Nation status with all of the nations lined up in the Silk Road Initiative. And lastly, China is the world's greatest currency manipulator. They have for decades been artificially devaluing their currency. Why? Making their products cheap on the international market. So they're able to dump their products, destroying jobs in Western Europe and the United States and other countries. But Basel III compliance, coupled with the quantum financial services, basically destroys a country's ability to artificially manipulate their currency. So everything in terms of what's going on in Iraq, what's going on in the Middle East, and what's going on globally, particularly with these new financial systems, points to the reinstitution of the dinar in January of 2020. So as far as I'm concerned, this is really good news. I get calls from clients that are disappointed. They've been involved in this for a decade. And I say, look, we're looking at 3 to 4 months tops. Keep your job. Enjoy your life. Enjoy the holidays. Buy some more currency. Just relax. It's inevitable. It's not a matter of if. It's just a matter of when. It's going to happen. It has to happen. Now, most Dinarians are hardworking, middle-class folks, never been in a position to manage a substantial amount of money. And because of all of the upheaval globally, things are going to get very complicated. So to that end, Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a package of pre-RV asset protection trusts with the assignment of your dinar and your other currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. So let's start with Phase 1, which is, again, the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Trusts Unlimited has established a package of irrevocable trusts for a very simple reason. It's the best asset protection available for a United States citizen. Now, there are other entities that one can establish to provide asset protection. For example, individuals can establish LLCs, sub-S corporations, and limited family partnerships. But these are business entities designed primarily to separate business assets and the liability of business assets from personal assets. The problem here is that these currencies are a personal asset. Second, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations that are owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. So they're inappropriate for our needs. Some individuals have established revocable trusts, sometimes referred to as living or loving trusts. And these trusts can exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, and in some cases substantially reduce or even eliminate the federal estate tax. But the revocable or living or loving trust can provide no privacy or asset protection. So they're going to be inappropriate for your needs. Now, some individuals have established single irrevocable trusts, and they do provide the best level of privacy and asset protection. But even the individual irrevocable trust has an inherent flaw, and it's this. If any asset within that trust gets dragged into civil litigation, that would necessarily drag all of the other assets and your net worth into that litigation, because all of the assets are owned by that single entity, that single individual irrevocable trust. The solution is to establish a package of irrevocable trusts, and this package will protect you both pre- and post-RV. However, the package must be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. I'll just give you some of the benefits that the package of irrevocable trust can provide that no other entity can provide in terms of asset protection. First, by establishing our package of irrevocable trusts, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets within our trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will probably spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it's come along at the precise time of this revaluation, and there's many other things you'd rather be spending your time doing. And lastly, the cost of a 6-year audit would probably be more than the cost of our asset protection trust package. On the other hand, if you have established your trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies, and you have assigned your currencies to that trust package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for 2 reasons. There's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if the taxable event of this revaluation were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust package such as ours. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit the trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you're planning on giving currency to family and friends. Philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the U.S. dollar lump sum after you've negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV U.S. dollar lump sum, you can give to them through our specially designed gift subtrust. And because you are gifting to them through this subtrust, their U.S. dollars and net worth will be protected along with yours. In addition, the language of this subtrust will allow you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can give to these individuals the U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And lastly, because you're gifting through the specially designed gift subtrust, which is part of our package, you will be able to directly manage, invest, and distribute this money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you 2 quick scenarios. Scenario number 1, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie your estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. and your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to your heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 65%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number 2. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies were valued for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The 5th reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer those currencies to our trust package. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000. The value of the currencies at the time you transferred them out of title and to the trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets, and this is why we have established a package of trusts. And I'll give you an example of how this would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. And now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by your master trust. This is what constitutes the package. And how does this protect you? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars. You have an accident. The accident is clearly your fault. and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is the important component. All of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in the other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. Therefore, the plaintiffs have no standing to pursue those separate legal entities. So your package of trusts work very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits, again, are lost to you if you do not establish your package of trusts prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2. All of the products, services, and professional referrals, that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. I'll just make mention of one benefit here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages post-RV. In addition, many of our clients have expressed a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with the direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. I also want to add that once the Iraqi dinar reinstitutes in country, Trusts Unlimited calls will be dealing expressly with our existing clients, and we will be dealing with the exchange process and all of the other issues that are going to be needed to be dealt with on a post-RV basis. We will also have our tax specialists at our seminar. Now that you've acquired this newfound wealth, it's be critical that you understand some of the more legitimate tax-avoidant tax strategies that will be made available to you. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. It's going to be important for you to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So that's another reason to get money out of the banks and at work in other markets. Lastly, the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth in tangible assets in order to avoid that volatility. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial accounts like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and is empowered with managing the other sub-trusts, one optional gift sub-trust, which at any time can be converted to a standard sub-trust, and 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold additional financial assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians about a decade ago, we knew that that price tag was going to be unaffordable for too many. So by basically simplifying the package and deferring all funding till after the revaluation, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum basically offsets our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. With this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your credit card would be less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order for all of the reasons that we've stated before. So it's irrelevant to us whatever method of payment you choose for yourself. One other point I'd like to make about our trust package. The only other lifetime cost to this trust package would be the rather nominal paralegal fees to fund these sub-trusts or add additional sub-trusts. I'll give you an example. Let's say 4 months after the revaluation, you contact us and say, we're going to close in the next 30 days on a beach house that costs about $500,000, and we'd like to create a sub-trust to protect that beach house. The paralegal fee to establish a sub-trust to protect a $500,000 beach house would be somewhere between $150 and $250. Again, a very nominal sum. And again, it's only to pay the paralegal fees to establish and fund these sub-trusts. Now, I'm going to go to the Q&A in just a moment, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. But before we go to the Q&A, and for the benefit of our newer callers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you should seriously consider contacting us to get our initial no-obligation package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in these areas. And I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have actually been working together for about a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. And it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, under our system of civil litigation, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. And it's invariably at those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes, then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trust Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. So again, thanks for listening to the call. We're going to go to a Q&A in just a moment. I strongly suggest you have a pencil and paper handy. I will give you our contact information, and I suggest you get a hold of our initial no-obligation package. It has a lot of information about us, about the trusts, about the revaluation of these currencies. You can review that package. Contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. 2 quick rules on the Q&A before I open. We don't take any service calls on the Q&A. This is designed for our newer callers. Our existing clients can contact us by phone or email if they have any service issues. And for obvious reasons, in order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must be on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last number. Rather than dialing a 4, you'll dial a 3, and then you'll use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be in our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically, pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the Dinar, emails may go out as often as weekly. So let's go to our calls. Our first caller here is area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Praveen from New York. I have a question. Any chance that Al-Kazemi is not wanting to reelect you? Would that delay the RV into the elections of next year now?
That is certainly a possibility, but it makes no sense to me. A lot is being done prior to January, this last quarter of 2020, in my opinion, specifically to make sure that everything's in place for the revaluation. Now, obviously, we've been involved in this for a decade, so we've seen postponement after postponement after postponement. But at this point, I see absolutely no reason for this to be postponed. And remember that when the new budget is put into place, there are some assumptions in that budget. One of them being, generally speaking, the price of a barrel of oil, which affects their revenues. The other being their expenditures. And the third being the value of their currency. So as far as I'm concerned, it makes absolutely no sense to defer the reinstitution of the dinar to June or when January of 2020 is the most plausible date.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. I can understand that caller's concern because those of us that have had currencies for just as long as I have, a decade, we're constantly disappointed. But I just think there's a glide path to January that at that point it makes it's counterproductive after January, in my opinion, to postpone the reinstitution of the dinar. Our next caller is area code 801. That's 801. Go ahead.
Jim, how are you? It's Clay Blackwell.
Yes, sir.
It's good to hear your voice. Listen, my friend, I want to have one quick question. You know, the Iraqis signed MOUs with the United States on the 20th with, I think, GE and also, I can't remember the other one. I think General Electric and Chevron. But the way
Correct.
I understand those MOUs is they have to be executed within 30 days. Is it going to require an RV before they can execute those MOUs?
No.
Okay.
No, they can begin the process. And remember, there are other tools that can be utilized for compensation. And there's no reason that they can't enter into an arrangement with the agreement that the compensation to GE and Chevron would be deferred. GE and Chevron are taking the long view on this. And that's another reason why the Chinese are being kicked to the curb as well. Evidently, the deal that Chevron and GE made has got to be sufficiently attractive for Iraq in order for them to agree to basically tell China to pound sand. So it would be better, of course, if they get this done, and that's another reason why January is a good date for the reinstitution. But the United States has already, and the international community has already dumped trillions into Iraq long before they anticipated the reinstitution of their currency.
But do you think that in order to pay they're going to pay them in trillions of dinar?
They might, on the theory that when those trillions revalue, they'll be compensated that way. To be honest with you, I can't tell you exactly how they're compensating payment for services rendered, but we know that Chevron and GE do have contracts, and if you got to know that Trump was involved. So if Trump's involved, everyone's going to end up having a real good day at the office.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, Clay. Next caller is area code 405. That's 405. Go ahead.
Hi. Good day, Jim. This is Doug in Oklahoma City.
Hey, Doug. How you doing?
We're doing well.
Good.
All things considered, I know that sometimes we had anticipated or even hoped that this might be done by our election in November. That's not probable, correct?
It's a possibility. It's unfortunate that the administration has so much on their plate right now. They sort of have to put on the back burner the things. You know, Trump's been talking about sound currency and level playing field and calling out these currency manipulators since the day he took office. But they just keep loading him up with all of this nonsensical stuff. I'll just give you one example. This country's been put through hysteria with this coronavirus thing, and then what does the CDC do the day after the RNC convention? They say that less than 10,000 people actually died as a result of the coronavirus. So it's just been a shame. We've lost a year. You know, it's a parallel. It's like the intransigent, corrupt, pro-Iranian officials in Iraq that are trying to save their status quo and their little fiefdom line up with the the status quo corrupt officials in the United States that just don't want to see us progress beyond their little globalist fiefdom. It's really a shame, but I agree with you. It would make, from a purely political standpoint, it would be a great move. And who knows? You know, Trump's a master of looking like it's, you know, he's just about to lose, and then boom, something happens and he's right back on top. You know, so. You know, we'll just have to see. But I agree with you completely. From a purely political standpoint, it would be a great thing. And, of course, for us, those of us who hold the currencies, we want to see it yesterday, irrespective of the political implications. But all things considered, January seems like the drop-dead date.
Oh, just one point of correction. I know that it's just an oversight, but it may be somewhat confusing for people who are just new to this. You keep referring to the potential for January 2020. I know you mean 2021. But
2021.
That's just something that comes to mind. As far as that
January 2020 is long gone.
Yeah, it is. But it might be confusing. So just so that they know
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Okay. This memorandum of understanding, I mean, the Iraqis aren't dumb. If they have anything that they have completed, they're using the American dollar right now. I mean, they would pay them in the currency that is the official currency of trade for their country right now. That would be the dollar. They would pay them in dollars. After the fact, when the dinar revalues, they would pay them in dinars. They're not going to give away $1 trillion dinars and have it revalue at $4. They're not going to do that. Anyway, so
yes, I agree. But they don't. But the problem is they don't have sufficient dollars in their reserve to pay us up front, which is why I say they can have a deferred payment arrangement because they need.
Deferred.
Because in order to pay their salaries, they're expending almost all of their U.S. dollar reserves, so they obviously can't do that. So the deferred payment arrangement is probably what's in the works.
And I agree with you. These are long-term views by GE and Chevron. What I find interesting is that
they can also pay. Not to interrupt you, but they can also pay them in oil credits.
Oh, good. Yes, that's true. What I find interesting is that the British Prime Minister and the Dutch Prime Minister have announced that they're going to Iraq to visit the Iraqi Prime Minister. You know, South Korea is a wealthy country, but they have a company in that country that calls a lot of the shots that happen politically, and that's Samsung. And I think that the Dutch Royal Shell would probably have the same kind of influence to the Dutch Prime Minister. They probably had a meeting and said, "Hey, you better get down there," and because we expend money on the rebuild, and so did every other Western European nation. And I think the same thing for British Petroleum, BP, that they probably said, "You get down there because Chevron's going to soak this up." So which tells me that the world community sees Iraq as coming out of the shadow. If Royal Dutch Shell and British Petroleum get down there and they want to make deals along with Chevron, I think that's a very good sign. I don't think it's coincidental that those two prime ministers are scheduling visits to Iraq just because they want to go down and shake his hand and introduce themselves. I think there's real economic and political motive there by the huge companies that probably call some. I don't know if they call the shots, but at least they have significant influence in those nations, just like Samsung does in South Korea.
Yeah, and of course the fact that the Western Europeans basically they're following Trump's lead. But Trump. I'll give you an example of something Trump might do. Let's say these other countries get in there and they're able to acquire some substantial contracts that maybe the United States feels like, look, we carried, we did all the heavy lifting in Iraq, and so now you're going to come in here and take a big piece of the pie. Fine, this is how it's going to work. You are going to sign off on the sanctions against Iran, or we're going to make sure the Iraqis don't do business with you. Iran has been a problem for Iraq. So if you want to make money in Iraq, you're going to have to sign off on the sanctions against Iran. So there's all kinds of, moves being made, but the United States has the right of first refusal on this rebuilding of the infrastructure from the coalition force that got rid of Saddam Hussein. Now, that doesn't mean the United States has exclusive rights, but all Trump had to do was have a meeting with al-Kazemi, and China gets kicked to the curb. So, like I say, Trump is doing all kinds of things behind the scenes. Of course, he gets zero credit for it because of the environment in the country right now. But he's the right guy at the right time.
Well, that's a good point because Germany and France probably stick their noses up at the U.S. more than any of the European nations, and they're going to have to, if they want part of the rebuild, they're going to have to make some compensations to stop doing business with Iran. I think, that's well said. I do have a question about the deferred taxes the exemption from it for the values of the reinstated dinars that are in our trusts. Can I ask a question about that?
Sure. You can ask whatever you want.
Very good. Okay. So it revalues the money's in a trust, and the IRS makes a decision that they're going to follow the code that's currently on the books. They're not going to reinterpret something, and so taxes are deferred for the money in the trust. That is correct, right?
That's the way the code reads.
Very good. Okay, so let's say that you want to pull some money out to either do a charitable donation, a tithe, or something like that. Does that come out under the provision that whatever you pull out, it might be deemed long-term capital gains, or it might be deemed ordinary income, and you pay the tax on what you pull out? Is that correct?
Okay, it should be treated as cap gain if the withdrawal is taxable. If you're giving to a charitable organization, that's tax deductible, so it's neutral. It won't be taxed. If you, and of course, this is something that we're going to be working with specifically once the reinstitution happens. We're going to try to compel the IRS to confirm that they're going to follow the code. When we get that answer, that'll tell us what some of our suggested options would be. For example, let's say that the IRS says, yes, if it's in an irrevocable trust, the gain, to the extent that it stays within the corpus of the trust, is tax deferred. Okay, well, I want to buy a house, and I need $100,000 for down payment. Well, then just borrow the entire amount and use the trust as collateral. Now, you will be able to find a financial organization. If I go in there and say, I got $10 million in this trust, I don't want to pull it out because anything I pull out is taxable. I want to borrow $150,000, and I'm using this trust as collateral. I promise you will find someone that will do that.
Well, I mean, if you do that, wouldn't you have to pay tax on the $100,000?
No, it's a loan. You're using the money in the trust as collateral, but you're borrowing $150,000. It's not taxable. Now, you'll pay interest, but would you rather pay tax on $150,000, meaning you probably have to pull out $250,000, or you rather pay right now? What are interest rates on real estate loans? 2.5%.
2.5%, right?
Yeah. So what would you rather do? Pay 50% in taxes or pay 2.5% loan?
Well, those are things that I hope those questions will be resolved in some of the meetings, hopefully, that we might have after this
right.
Because that's beyond my scope of understanding for the workings in a irrevocable trust. I'll just have to admit that I'm deferring to people who know more than I do.
Well,
one last question.
It's not the complication of the trust. It's just whether the IRS is going to honor the code as written. If they are, we have options, and if they're not, we have options. We just need to know what they're going to do.
Right. One last question, again, about the trust. Say you want to pull out just living money, and you decide that you want to pay yourself $250,000 a year. The money comes out so you can spend it as you want. Does that money come out as money taxable at some rate,
okay.
Like 20%?
All right.
40%?
Let's say you have $10 million in there, and you say, okay, I want to pull out. I'm just using round numbers, and let's let's say you earn $500,000 on that $10 million over 12-month period. You pull $250,000 out, and the trust retains $250,000. You will pay income taxes on the $250,000 that you received, and the trust will pay income taxes on the $250,000 it retained.
Okay, and that you think that would be at an ordinary income?
Yes, it'll be ordinary income.
So 40%.
Unless, well, it depends on how the money's invested, but it should be ordinary income.
Well, the ordinary income, yeah, invested, that the money stays in the trust, but the money you pull out, you want to spend it. You just flat out, I don't know what, but just say that you want to spend the $250,000, and so you'd probably have to pull out about $350,000 in order to do that, correct?
And well, if you wanted to net $250,000, you'd need to pull more out, of course. But my point is, whatever you pull out, which is interest and dividends on the corpus, whatever you pull out, you will be taxed personally for. Whatever the trust retains, it'll be taxed on.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. And look forward to next one.
Okay, Doug. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, our next call, someone else jumped in here. Let's see. That's area code 312. That's 312. That's got to be Les.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Nope. Good afternoon to you, Jim.
What's up, you? What's up, my friend?
Man, I'm all right. Last week, my call dropped. I called back in, and I was hoping you looked over at the screen to see that I called back in, but I heard everything you said. And then you ended the call. I was like, oh, my goodness.
Sorry about that. I didn't pick it up.
That's okay. But the first caller actually asked the questions that I was going to ask last week regarding the 4 companies that Iraq will have or have already signed the contracts with, and GE being one, which is moving awfully slow over here stock-wise. But so you
another control mechanism is this. Other countries may get in there. Other countries may want to negotiate deals. But remember, the United States Treasury has to sign off on the reinstitution. So Iraq's not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize that. So the United States isn't saying we're the only game in town. I'm just saying the United States is going to make sure that they are properly compensated for the money and treasure and time that they've put into the reemergence of the country.
Yes, that is correct. And if Trump is behind it, it will happen. I'm in total agreement with what you were saying regarding the deals Trump has done, because some folks think that Israel and the Saudis meeting would never have happened or would never have happened, period. But Trump has the deals going. He's making the deals. And whether they want to believe it or not, he's making the deals.
He is. And, he gets zero credit for it. Here we have, going all the way back to Jimmy Carter, every single president has tried as hard as they possibly can to work out some sort of a peace deal between Israel and its neighbors. The only one that's actually succeeded at it is Donald Trump, and he gets zero credit for it. So people that are actually paying attention, that have an IQ above room temperature, have figured this out.
Oh, man, I like that, above room temperature. So the last caller mentioned about Iraq not being dumb. Well, I want to say they're not smart. They should have had this thing done a long time ago. So is that like an apple and an orange? Or
No, they're not dumb, but there are too many nefarious people involved.
Yeah.
The people inside the Beltway in the United States, in the D.C. Beltway, they're not dumb. They're just not necessarily honorable. Okay?
They're just thieves.
Yeah. It's exactly. And just in general, any time you make a major change of the status quo, the people, whoever they are, that have been benefiting from that status quo, good, bad, or whatever, are going to try to maintain the status quo.
Correct.
That's just human nature. And it's unfortunate because good people are being hurt because bad people don't really care. So hopefully goodness will prevail here, and we'll all move forward.
Yeah, it's the needs of the many versus the needs of the few. The few are the people in government.
Not the need.
No,
the needs of the many versus the selfishness of a few.
Well, the few are in charge to make the calls, which makes it impossible for the many that actually need it to get what they need in an appropriate amount of time that no one's affected, in too much of a harmful way. But I just don't have a lot of good things to say about Iraq, even though they do have all the corruption going on. It should have ended years ago. And
the entire Middle East has been an interfamily food fight for 3,000 years. I mean, it's just always been a mess, and we're never going to be able to unravel all of that. I mean, we're just saying, look, let Iraq proceed, let them revalue their currency, let us go to the bank and do our exchange, and then we can pray for all mankind. It's just where we are. I will give you one odd scenario that I think is a possibility. Let's assume hypothetically, believe me, this is hypothetical. I don't believe it's going to happen. But this is the kind of guy Trump is. Let's assume hypothetically that there is some sort of an October surprise and it looks like Trump's going to lose in a landslide. Let's say that were to happen. I don't think there's any chance that would happen. But hypothetically, let's say that would happen. You know what I think Trump would do? I think he would make darn sure that the currency got revalued before he left office. Because it would benefit everyone.
Yeah. Well, to tell you the truth, I think, I believe you. And to tell you the truth, I think that with this election coming, Trump will probably win. Only because there's some things that need to be done that's not finished yet. And I think it was this morning I heard on the news something about the initiative, what's that yellow brick road thing? What's that yellow brick road? It's not.
No, that you.
I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of. Yeah.
You're talking about the Silk Road initiative with China.
Silk Road. There you go.
Yeah.
That Silk Road deal.
Yeah.
They're reporting it's down, but it's going to happen.
Well, eventually it probably will happen, but the difference is that with all of the new financial systems and with sound money, China is not. Yeah, China, it will profit from it, but China's profits have been probably cut by 90% because they're not going to be able to manipulate their currency. The idea is that they're going to establish direct trade with all of the countries on the Silk Road. But because they're not going to be able to artificially devalue their currency, other countries are going to be able to participate and profit from it as well.
Right. Okay. Well, I am finished.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for taking my call. Say hi to the professor, and have a great day.
Will do. Take care.
All right.
Take care, Les.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Well, Les was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. If the things we've discussed here are of interest to you, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial package. It's a no-obligation package, although it does contain everything you need if you should decide to request the establishment of a trust package. You can contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. Our next scheduled call is, of course, next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency email call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So have a great week, everyone, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.